Welcome to this explainer. Listen, if you're a parent, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. The absolute dread of teaching your kids the times tables. We've literally all been there, right? Sitting at the kitchen table, staring down a stack of flashcards, and you can just feel the frustration mounting for both of you. But what if I told you there's actually a completely stress-free way to do this? Today, we're demystifying multiplication, and by the end of this explainer, you're going to be fully equipped to help your child see multiplication not as this awful chore, but as an incredibly fascinating, interconnected puzzle. So the big question, do kids really have to memorize 100 different facts? We have to tackle this first, because this right here is the root of all the anxiety. Just picture that standard 10 by 10 multiplication chart. To a kid seeing this for the first time, it looks like a giant, impossible wall of 100 disconnected random numbers that they just have to brute force into their brains. It is so overwhelming. But okay, here's the amazing truth that honestly changes everything. 15. That is literally it. Just 15. Once you cross out the simple shortcuts and the mirror facts, which, don't worry, we're going to walk through together today, there are only 15 genuine target facts left to learn. Suddenly, that terrifying, impossible wall, it becomes a totally manageable little stepping stone. Let's actually look at how we shrink that giant grid down to just these 15 numbers. Okay, let's dive into Section 1, Meaning Before Memorization. Subtitle here is Seeing the Math. Before we get into any of the cool tricks or shortcuts, we really have to establish what multiplication actually is. You know, it's not just some fancy, faster way of writing out repeated addition. At its very core, multiplication is all about equal groups. And here is a brilliant way to illustrate that concept. I want you to just picture 3 plates sitting on a table. Now on each plate, there are exactly 4 strawberries. So 1 plate has 4, 2 plates have 8, and 3 plates have 12. 3 times 4 equals 12. It's that simple. Kids learn so much better when they can visually understand what the numbers actually represent in the real world. We absolutely have to see the math before we try to memorize it. Once that visual meaning is really locked in, we can move right along to Section 2, the shortcuts, or clearing the board. See, we should never just throw the entire times table at a kid. That's a recipe for disaster. Instead, we can dramatically clear the board using some massive overarching shortcuts. Now let's look at this really fascinating concept, the flip fact. Okay, officially, the math textbook calls this the commutative property of multiplication, but you definitely don't need to use that mouthful with kids. Honestly, just call them flip facts, or even mirror twins. If your child learns that 3 groups of 4 equals 12, guess what? They get 4 groups of 3 completely for free. It's the exact same answer. Just by understanding this one simple rule, you instantly cut the entire multiplication table right in half. How great is that? Next up, we establish the anchor facts. These are the easiest facts to grasp, and they give kids a really secure, confident foundation. Let's just walk through them quickly. Times 0, just think of empty bags. It's always 0. Times 1 is the mathematical mirror. The number just stays exactly the same. Times 10, that's simply a place value shift. You just move the number over to the tens place. Times 2 literally just means doubling the number. And times 5 is fantastic because it's just half of 10, and the answer always ends in a 0 or a 5. Once these anchors are secure, kids can use them as a launch pad to figure out the harder numbers. Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, the master trick. We are going to break it apart. This right here is where we unveil the ultimate superpower for your child. Instead of freezing up when they see a difficult number, they can just borrow from the facts they already know. Take 7 times 8. It is notoriously stubborn. Kids absolutely hate this one. But look at what happens when we use the master trick. We simply break that tricky 7 apart into really friendly numbers, 5 and 2. Your child already knows their anchor facts, right? So they easily calculate 5 times 8, which is 40. Then they calculate 2 times 8, which is 16. Add those together, 40 plus 16, and boom, you get 56. No stress. We just completely bypassed rote memorization by using a little bit of simple logic. Let's actually see how this master trick builds across other really challenging numbers. We are essentially building a mathematical staircase, connecting facts they already know to facts they don't. Multiplying by 4? Just double the number and then double it again. Multiplying by 8? Easy, double it 3 times. What about times 3? Well, that's just doubling the number and then adding one more group. And times 6 is just taking that friendly times 5 answer and adding one more group. It's a completely connected network. And then, of course, we have the 9s. Instead of panic setting in, teach your child this brilliant strategy. Just multiply by 10 and subtract one group. So say you have 9 times 7. Just think 10 times 7, which is 70, then simply take away one group of 7. 70 minus 7 gives you 63. It works beautifully every single time and turns a scary number into an incredibly easy subtraction problem. We also have square facts, which are just numbers multiplied by themselves. Think of these as major landmarks on the multiplication map. If your child knows that 8 times 8 is 64, well, that landmark helps them navigate. If they suddenly need to figure out 7 times 8, they just start at 64 and subtract one group of 8 to arrive at 56. They're never truly lost if they know their landmarks. Okay, so how do we actually apply all of this? Section 4, stress-free practice routine, or 15 minutes to fluency. You can legitimately get from 0 to fluency in just 15 minutes a day. You do not need to sit down for an hour of exhausting, tear-inducing rote memorization. Short, focused practice using the right routine is vastly more effective. Here is the highly structured 4-step practice routine that you can start using today. Step 1, see it. Build the fact with blocks or buttons so they can actually visualize those equal groups. Step 2, find a route. Ask them, which easier fact could help us here? Let them use that master trick. Step 3, retrieve. Put the physical objects away, give them a few seconds, and ask for the fact again. And hey, if they forget, that's totally okay. Just rebuild the route. Finally, step 4, mix it up. Don't just skip count in order. Ask facts out of sequence so they really practice rapid retrieval. Now, doing this requires a bit of a shift in how we speak to our kids at the table. We really need to move away from the old, anxiety-inducing way of demanding, what is the answer? Because if they don't know it, they just freeze. Instead, the new way asks strategic questions like, which easier fact could help? Or, can you show me the groups? This entirely changes the game. It turns multiplication into reasoning and problem solving, rather than just nervously checking to see if they're right or wrong. I really want to share this quote directly from our source material because it is just so incredibly reassuring. It says, "Fluency isn't about panicking because a stopwatch is ticking. It's about knowing what to do and becoming faster through practice. If you have struggled with timers and flashcards causing literal meltdowns in your house, please just let that go. Accuracy, strategy, and understanding, those absolutely must always precede speed." So, I'm going to leave you with this question. Are you ready to help them see multiplication as a connected map instead of an impossible wall of facts? By using these visual tricks, the anchor facts, and that master break-apart strategy, you can completely transform your kitchen table practice sessions. Seriously, it doesn't have to be a chore anymore. It can actually be a really fascinating puzzle that you get to solve together. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and have an awesome time exploring that mathematical map with your kids